Hello and welcome back to the Sim Racing channel where nothing is impossible. It's Radeon for Sim Racing with Handicap 502, and today we will test the brand new Super Touring cars in Raceroom. If I'm not mistaken, Raceroom is the first sim to officially get the class of Super Touring cars. These cars are famous from their use in championships like the British and Swedish Touring Car Championship. The pack contains 5 cars, and what makes it especially interesting is that it contains not only front wheel drive cars but also one rear and one all-wheel drive car. I will do a lap in every car to find out how fast the cars are and explain how they drive. The track I chose is Donington Park, as all these cars race there in real life and because it has every type of corner from slow to fast. Now let's head onto the track to test the first car. The first car I tested is the Honda Accord. First of all, I want to mention that I drove all cars with the default setup to make it a fair comparison. The Honda is front wheel drive and I think the behavior is quite realistic. It understeers on corner exit if you're too aggressive, as you would expect it, and it likes to lift the inner rear wheel on corner entry, as it's typical for many front wheel drive race cars. The result of that is that the inner rear wheel likes to lock up very easily. Overall, I'm not a big fan of the brakes of the Honda, as they are very hard to control as they lock up easily. The understeer out of the corner isn't too bad, it's actually very controllable, but on the other hand it doesn't like to rotate on corner entry. So overall, I'm not the biggest fan of the Honda. The lap time was a 1:37.6. I think that's pretty close to the optimum I could do with the standard setup. As the brakes are so difficult to control, I needed quite a long time to get that lap time. We will see how good that time is compared to the other cars. The second car is the Volvo 850. My lap time with it was basically as fast as the time with the Honda Accord with a 137.6. The car also drives relatively similar. The brakes are even a bit harder to control than in the Honda. The car also likes to lift the inner rear wheel, which is one of the reasons why it locks up quite easily. In fast corners like turn 3, I feel like the Volvo is a bit better as it has more grip on the front, and I think it rotates a bit better on corner entry than the Honda, especially from the outside. Now let's talk about the third car, the Volvo S40. With a 137.3, my first lap was already quite a bit faster than my fastest laps in the Honda Accord and the Volvo 850. My fastest lap of 136.7 was actually around 1 second faster than the fastest laps in the cars I tested before. But the S40 is not only way faster, but also way nicer to drive. The brakes of the S40 are way better to control. You can be way more aggressive on the brakes without locking up, which also makes it easier to be consistent. The car rotates the best on the brakes out of the front wheel drive cars. It actually feels the closest to modern front wheel drive touring cars like the TCR cars, which rotate even more on the brakes. So overall, I like the Volvo the most out of the front wheel drive cars. From the outside, the sound of the car is amazing as well. Now to the fourth car, the BMW 320i E36, the only rear-wheel drive out of the bunch. I really like the BMW. I think it's one of the easiest to drive cars. It rotates very nicely on corner entry and it does understeer the least out of all 5 cars on corner exit, which is obvious as it's a rear-wheel drive car. Out of slow corners you have to be careful because if the rear starts to slip, sometimes it's so sudden that it's nearly impossible to catch it. The brakes are very nice to control, you can nearly be as aggressive as if the car had ABS. The lap time was still a bit slower than with the Volvo, it was a 1:37.0, but as the lap wasn't perfect, I think a time close to the Volvo S40 would be possible. Now to the last car, the Audi A4 Quattro, the only all-wheel drive car. The Audi is probably the easiest to drive out of the 5 cars. It rotates quite good on corner entry and you can be pretty aggressive on the brakes, nearly as aggressive as with the BMW. The traction out of the corner is due to the all-wheel drive very good and you can be super aggressive on throttle. Still the car doesn't understeer as much as the front-wheel drive cars. The lap time was a 1:37.1, so a tenth slower as the BMW and 4/10 than the Volvo S40, but with a perfect lap it would definitely be possible to get close to the S40, so I think overall the car is pretty much as fast as the S40 and the BMW, and in a race it might be the best option as it is the easiest to drive close to the limit for a longer time without making a bigger mistake. Overall I can say the Audi was a lot of fun to drive. So here we have all the lap times. My verdict is that I think the cars are all well made and fun to drive, but I personally like the Volvo S40, the BMW and the Audi the most, and I think they're all more or less equally fast. It just comes down to your driving style and if you get along better with front, rear or all-wheel drive, and it will obviously depend on the track. In general, I love that we have these cars now in Raceroom, and it's even better that they already said that they will bring more cars in this class. I really hope we will get the Renault Laguna, the Peugeot 406 and the Vauxhall Vectra. And now I'll show you some highlights of the races I did with the AI on the new tracks Silverstone Classic and Estoril to give you a taste on the amazing races we all will have with these cars.